Sarah Martinez had covered technology stories for 15 years, but nothing had prepared her for the assignment that would change her understanding of wealth, power, and survival. The freelance investigative journalist received a tip from an anonymous source about unusual construction activity at what was officially registered as a luxury farm in New Zealand's South Island. The property, spanning 3,000 acres of pristine rolling hills near Queenstown, was owned through a complex web of shell companies that eventually traced back to a prominent Silicon Valley figure. Public records showed it as an organic farm, producing premium wool and grass-fed beef for export, complete with environmental sustainability certifications and glowing articles in agricultural magazines. Sarah's source, who identified himself only as Kiwi Builder, claimed to have worked on the property's construction project. His encrypted messages described something far more sinister than sustainable farming. A massive underground complex designed to house dozens of people for extended periods during global catastrophes. The scale of the project, he claimed, dwarfed anything previously seen in private bunker construction. New Zealand had become a popular destination for wealthy Americans seeking secondary residences, particularly after global events had highlighted the fragility of international systems. The country's isolation, political stability, and relaxed immigration policies for investors made it an attractive refuge for those with sufficient resources to obtain residency through investment programs. What set this property apart, according to the source, was not just its size, but its sophistication. The underground facility allegedly included hydroponic farms, water purification systems, medical facilities, communication centers, and living quarters designed to maintain luxury standards during indefinite isolation. The construction had been conducted under extreme secrecy, with workers required to sign comprehensive non-disclosure agreements. Sarah booked a flight to Auckland, ostensibly to write a story about New Zealand's agricultural innovation. Her real mission was to investigate whether the global elite were preparing for catastrophes they expected the rest of humanity to face unprepared. New Zealand's pristine beauty struck Sarah immediately upon arrival. Rolling green hills, crystal-clear lakes, and snow-capped mountains created a landscape that seemed untouched by the chaos affecting much of the world. The country's reputation as a safe haven was immediately apparent in its relaxed atmosphere and friendly population. Sarah rented a vehicle in Queenstown and began reconnaissance of the target property. From public roads, the farm appeared exactly as advertised: pastoral perfection with grazing sheep, pristine fencing, and a modest farmhouse surrounded by well-maintained barns and outbuildings. Nothing suggested the presence of a secret survival complex beneath the bucolic surface. However, closer observation revealed subtle anomalies. The farm employed an unusually large security staff for an agricultural operation. Multiple observation towers, disguised as grain silos, provided 360-degree surveillance of the property and surrounding areas. The access road was far more robust than necessary for farm equipment, suggesting it was designed to handle much heavier traffic. Most suspicious was the constant stream of specialized vehicles entering and leaving the property. While sheep farms typically required occasional visits from veterinarians and feed suppliers, this operation hosted frequent deliveries from companies specializing in telecommunications equipment, medical supplies, and advanced water filtration systems. The pattern suggested preparation for something far beyond agricultural operations. Sarah established observation posts at several locations around the property's perimeter, documenting vehicle movements and personnel patterns. The farm operated with military-like precision, with shifts changing at regular intervals and all visitors subjected to thorough security screening before entry. This level of organization seemed excessive for legitimate farming operations. Local residents in nearby towns spoke positively about the farm, noting that it provided employment and contributed to the local economy. However, none had been inside the facility, and all described the owner as someone who valued privacy and rarely appeared in person. The disconnect between the farm's public image and its actual operations suggested deliberate deception. Sarah's breakthrough came when Kiwi Builder agreed to a clandestine meeting at a remote cafe in Wanaka. The man who appeared was in his 50s, weathered from years of construction work, and clearly nervous about the meeting. He introduced himself only as Tom and insisted on speaking in generalities to avoid identifying specific projects or individuals. Tom described working on what he was told was a wine cellar and storage facility for the farm. However, the scale and specifications of the construction project far exceeded anything needed for agricultural storage. The excavation had reached depths of over 100 feet, with reinforced concrete construction designed to withstand significant seismic activity and external pressure. The most revealing detail was the installation of independent life support systems. Tom had helped install redundant air filtration systems, backup power generators, and water recycling equipment, capable of supporting dozens of people for extended periods. The facility included multiple levels, with the deepest sections accessible only through security checkpoints that required biometric authentication. Tom produced photographs taken covertly during construction, showing massive concrete pours, sophisticated ventilation systems, and reinforced blast doors that would not look out of place in a military installation. The images revealed a facility designed for long-term occupation under hostile conditions, far beyond what would be necessary for any legitimate agricultural purpose. Most disturbing was Tom's description of the living quarters he had seen during construction. Rather than utilitarian survival spaces, the underground complex featured luxury accommodations comparable to high-end hotels. Private suites, recreational facilities, and gourmet kitchen equipment suggested the bunker was designed to maintain comfortable living standards during extended isolation. Tom's motivation for coming forward was moral outrage at the inequality the project represented, while ordinary citizens remained vulnerable to global catastrophes. The wealthy were constructing elaborate private shelters without regard for the welfare of surrounding communities. He felt compelled to expose what he saw as a betrayal of social responsibility. Tom's revelations opened a door to a much larger conspiracy. He provided Sarah with contact information for other construction workers who had been involved in similar projects across New Zealand. What emerged was evidence of a coordinated network of underground facilities being constructed by and for the global elite. Sarah contacted Marcus Chen, a systems engineer who had worked on telecommunications infrastructure for multiple agricultural properties. Marcus described installing satellite communication systems, encrypted data networks, and video conferencing facilities that would allow bunker occupants to maintain contact with the outside world during extended isolation periods. The communication systems were designed to function independently of public infrastructure, with backup power systems and shielded cables protected against electromagnetic pulse events. Marcus noted that the level of redundancy and protection exceeded what would be necessary for routine business operations, suggesting preparation for scenarios involving widespread infrastructure failure. Dr. Rachel Thompson, a former medical equipment supplier, described delivering and installing hospital-grade medical equipment to various rural properties. The equipment included surgical instruments, diagnostic devices, and pharmaceutical storage systems capable of maintaining medication stocks for extended periods. The medical facilities were designed to handle everything from routine healthcare to emergency surgery without external support. Perhaps most revealing was the testimony of James Wilson, a former military contractor who had worked on security systems for several properties. James described installing defensive measures that went far beyond protecting agricultural assets, motion sensors, reinforced entry points, and communication systems designed to coordinate responses to external threats. The pattern that emerged was of a coordinated effort by wealthy individuals to establish self-sufficient survival complexes throughout New Zealand. Each facility was designed to operate independently while maintaining communication with others in the network. The scale and sophistication of the project suggested preparation for catastrophic events that would make normal society uninhabitable. Sarah realized she was documenting not just individual bunkers, but an entire parallel infrastructure designed to preserve the wealthy elite during global catastrophes while leaving the general population to face disasters unprepared. Sarah's investigation shifted to financial and legal documentation that might reveal the scope and funding of the bunker network. New Zealand's property records, company registrations, and import documentation provided a wealth of information for those who knew where to look. The ownership structures were deliberately complex, involving multiple layers of shell companies registered in various jurisdictions. However, careful analysis revealed common patterns in the legal entities, financial transactions, and professional services used across multiple properties. The same law firms, accounting services, and construction companies appeared repeatedly in connection with ostensibly unrelated agricultural properties. Import records showed these farms purchasing equipment and supplies that bore no relationship to legitimate farming operations. Massive quantities of preserved food, medical supplies, fuel, and specialized equipment were being shipped to rural properties under agricultural exemptions. The volume and nature of these imports suggested preparation for extended isolation from normal supply chains. Sarah discovered that several properties had been granted special permits for deep excavation projects, ostensibly for wine cellars or equipment storage. However, the specifications for these excavations far exceeded what would be necessary for agricultural purposes. Permit applications requested authorization for reinforced concrete construction, specialized ventilation systems, and installation of independent power generation equipment. Financial records revealed the true scale of investment in these projects. Individual properties had received tens of millions of dollars in improvements, far exceeding the value of the land and legitimate agricultural infrastructure. The level of investment only made sense if viewed as insurance against catastrophic events rather than agricultural development. Most concerning was evidence that the construction network extended beyond New Zealand. Similar patterns of shell company ownership, equipment imports, and construction permits appeared in property records from other isolated locations, remote areas of Canada, northern Scotland, and rural Australia. The bunker network was apparently global in scope. Sarah began to understand that she was documenting not just individual survival preparations, but a coordinated effort by the global elite to establish a parallel civilization capable of surviving whatever catastrophes they anticipated. Sarah's investigation took a dramatic turn when she received an encrypted message from someone claiming to be a former employee of the primary shell company coordinating the bunker construction. The individual, who identified himself as David Park, agreed to meet under strict security conditions at a neutral location. David had worked as a project coordinator for what he was told was a luxury resort development company. His job involved scheduling construction crews, ordering supplies, and coordinating logistics for multiple properties across New Zealand. Over time, he began to notice discrepancies between the official project descriptions and the actual work being performed. The turning point came when David was asked to coordinate the delivery of radiation detection equipment and chemical filtration systems to several properties. When he questioned the need for such equipment at luxury resorts, he was told it was for environmental monitoring to ensure guest safety. However, the specifications and quantities suggested preparation for much more severe environmental contamination. David's suspicions were confirmed when he accidentally accessed restricted sections of the company's internal database. The files revealed detailed plans for a network of survival facilities designed to house specific groups of wealthy individuals during various catastrophic scenarios. The plans included provisions for maintaining the facilities for years without external support. Most disturbing was a document David described as a guest list for each facility. The lists included prominent figures from technology, finance, and politics, along with essential personnel such as doctors, engineers, and security specialists. The selection criteria appeared to prioritize individuals who could contribute to maintaining the facilities and rebuilding civilization after catastrophic events. David's decision to come forward was motivated by moral outrage at what he saw as an abandonment of social responsibility. The wealthy individuals funding these projects were investing billions in personal survival, while doing nothing to address the global problems that might make such shelters necessary. He felt compelled to expose what he saw as a betrayal of humanity. The meeting with David provided Sarah with specific names, locations, and operational details that would allow her to verify and expand her investigation. However, David also warned her about the powerful interests involved and the lengths they might go to protect their secrets. David's revelations led Sarah to investigate the connection between Silicon Valley technology leaders and the New Zealand bunker network. The relationship between tech wealth and doomsday preparation ran deeper than simple financial investment. It reflected a worldview that saw catastrophic change as inevitable and private preparation as the only rational response. Research into technology industry publications revealed a pattern of public statements by prominent figures expressing pessimism about global stability. Climate change, political polarization, technological disruption, and economic inequality were frequently cited as threats that could lead to social collapse. However, these public concerns were apparently being addressed through private survival preparations rather than public solutions. The technology industry's approach to the bunker network reflected its broader philosophy of solving problems through innovation and individual action rather than collective effort. Just as tech leaders had disrupted traditional industries through private companies, they were now disrupting traditional approaches to catastrophic risk through private survival infrastructure. Sarah discovered that several technology companies had patents and research projects directly relevant to bunker operations. Advanced life support systems, renewable energy technology, hydroponic agriculture, and communication networks were all areas where tech companies had developed solutions applicable to isolated survival scenarios. The financial resources required for the bunker network were staggering but manageable for individuals with tech industry wealth. A single successful company exit could fund construction of multiple survival facilities, providing insurance against catastrophic events while maintaining current lifestyle standards. The cost-benefit calculation made sense for individuals with sufficient wealth. However, the broader implications were troubling. If the individuals with the greatest resources and influence were preparing for social collapse rather than working to prevent it, what did that suggest about the likelihood of catastrophic events? Were the bunkers a rational response to genuine threats, or were they creating a self-fulfilling prophecy by diverting resources from collective solutions? Sarah realized that the bunker network represented more than individual survival preparation. It reflected a fundamental shift in how wealthy elites viewed their relationship to society and their responsibilities to the broader population. Sarah's investigation expanded to examine how the bunker network was affecting local New Zealand communities. While the projects brought construction jobs and economic activity to rural areas, they also created subtle but significant changes in local demographics, real estate markets, and social dynamics. Property values in areas surrounding bunker locations had increased dramatically, pricing out local residents and changing the character of rural communities. Traditional farming families found themselves unable to compete with wealthy buyers willing to pay far above market value for properties with strategic value rather than agricultural potential. Local government officials expressed mixed feelings about the developments. While the projects brought tax revenue and employment, they also strained local infrastructure and created communities that existed outside normal social networks. The bunker owners were absentee landlords who contributed economically but not socially to their communities. Sarah interviewed local residents who described changes in their communities as wealthy outsiders purchased large properties and restricted access to areas that had traditionally been open to local use. Hiking trails, fishing spots, and recreational areas were being closed off as private security measures expanded around bunker locations. The employment created by bunker construction was temporary and specialized, providing short-term income but not sustainable economic development. Workers were often brought in from outside the area for specialized tasks, limiting the benefits to local communities. Once construction was complete, the facilities required minimal ongoing employment. Most concerning was the impact on emergency preparedness for local communities. While the wealthy bunker owners were investing millions in private survival infrastructure, public emergency services remained underfunded and unprepared for major disasters. The contrast between private and public preparedness created a stark inequality in disaster resilience. Local residents expressed resentment at being excluded from preparations for disasters that would affect everyone in the region. The bunker network created a two-tier system where the wealthy had access to sophisticated survival infrastructure, while ordinary citizens remained vulnerable to the same threats. Sarah began to understand that the bunker network was not just about individual survival, but about maintaining social stratification, even in post-disaster scenarios. Sarah's research expanded to examine the global context that was driving wealthy individuals to invest in survival infrastructure. The bunker network was not simply paranoia, but a rational response to genuine risks that were becoming increasingly apparent to those with access to comprehensive information and analysis. Climate change projections showed increasing likelihood of extreme weather events, agricultural disruption, and population displacement that could overwhelm existing institutions. Political polarization in major democracies was creating instability that could lead to civil conflict or governmental collapse. Economic inequality was reaching levels that historically preceded social upheaval. Technology industry leaders had unique access to information about emerging risks through their companies' data analysis capabilities, government contracts, and personal networks. They were seeing early indicators of systemic problems that might not be apparent to the general public until crisis situations emerged. The bunker network represented a form of insurance against these risks, but one that was only available to individuals with extraordinary wealth. While ordinary citizens relied on public institutions and social support networks for disaster preparedness, the wealthy were creating private alternatives that would function independently of public systems. International relations experts pointed out that the concentration of survival resources among wealthy elites could exacerbate global instability. If those with the greatest influence and resources were preparing for societal collapse, rather than working to prevent it, they might be less motivated to address the underlying problems driving global risks. The psychological impact of bunker preparation was also significant. Individuals who invested heavily in survival infrastructure might be more likely to view catastrophic events as inevitable, creating self-fulfilling prophecies where preparation for conflict increased the likelihood of conflict actually occurring. Sarah realized that the bunker network reflected broader changes in how wealth and power operated in the 21st century. Rather than maintaining stability through public institutions, wealthy elites were increasingly relying on private solutions that protected them from the consequences of systemic problems while leaving others to face those consequences unprepared. Investigation into the security measures surrounding the bunker network revealed a sophisticated apparatus designed to protect not just physical facilities, but also information about their existence and operations. The level of operational security suggested that the bunker network was viewed as a strategic asset requiring protection from both external threats and public disclosure. Security personnel hired for bunker operations were typically former military or intelligence professionals with specialized training in protective operations. Background checks were extensive, covering not just criminal history, but also financial circumstances, family relationships, and psychological profiles. The hiring process ensured that security staff would be loyal and discreet. Electronic surveillance around bunker locations included not just standard security cameras, but also sophisticated detection systems capable of identifying approaching vehicles, aircraft, and personnel from significant distances. The surveillance network was designed to provide early warning of potential threats while maintaining the appearance of routine agricultural operations. Communication security involved encrypted systems that could not be monitored through standard surveillance methods. Regular communications followed predetermined protocols designed to conceal the nature and location of bunker operations from potential eavesdroppers. Emergency communication procedures were in place to coordinate responses to various threat scenarios. Physical security measures included multiple layers of protection, from perimeter barriers disguised as agricultural infrastructure to reinforced bunker entrances designed to withstand both natural disasters and human attacks. Access control systems required multiple forms of authentication and could be modified quickly to deny entry to unauthorized personnel. Counter-surveillance operations were conducted regularly to detect and neutralize potential intelligence gathering by hostile parties. These operations included monitoring of local communications, identification of suspicious activities in surrounding areas, and assessment of potential security threats from both criminal and governmental sources. The security apparatus around the bunker network was comparable to that protecting critical government facilities, suggesting that the wealthy individuals involved viewed their survival infrastructure as essential to national or global security rather than simply personal protection. Sarah's investigation forced her to confront fundamental questions about wealth, responsibility, and survival in an era of global crisis. The bunker network represented a stark example of how extreme inequality was creating different standards of security and survival for different segments of society. The moral implications were complex and troubling. While wealthy individuals had the right to protect themselves and their families, their approach to survival preparation seemed to abandon any sense of responsibility for the broader communities and societies that had enabled their wealth accumulation. The bunkers represented a privatization of survival that left others to face catastrophic risks unprepared. Ethicists and philosophers had been debating these issues as global risks became more apparent and survival preparation became more sophisticated. Some argued that individuals with extraordinary resources had obligations to use those resources for collective benefit rather than private protection. Others maintained that personal responsibility for survival was a fundamental right that could not be constrained by social obligations. The bunker network raised questions about the social contract between wealthy elites and the societies that enabled their success. If those with the greatest resources were preparing to abandon society during crisis periods, what did that suggest about their commitment to the institutions and communities that had supported their wealth creation? Religious leaders expressed concern about the spiritual implications of bunker culture, arguing that survival preparation based on exclusion of others contradicted fundamental principles of human dignity and mutual responsibility. The focus on physical survival, without regard for spiritual or social values, was seen as a form of moral poverty despite material wealth. Mental health professionals noted the psychological costs of bunker culture, both for those preparing for catastrophe and for those excluded from survival preparations. The constant focus on potential disasters and the creation of social divisions based on access to survival resources could contribute to anxiety, paranoia, and social fragmentation. Sarah struggled with her own role in exposing the bunker network, recognizing that her investigation might compromise security measures designed to protect people during genuine emergencies, while also believing that public awareness of these preparations was necessary for democratic accountability. Sarah's investigation revealed that government officials at various levels were aware of the bunker network, but had chosen not to interfere with private survival preparations. The response reflected complex political calculations involving economic benefits, legal constraints, and strategic considerations. New Zealand government officials acknowledged that wealthy foreign investors were contributing significantly to the national economy through property purchases, construction projects, and ongoing investments. The revenue generated by bunker construction provided employment and tax income that benefited local communities, creating political incentives to avoid excessive scrutiny of private security preparations. Legal analysis suggested that most bunker construction activities were technically compliant with existing regulations, even if they stretched the boundaries of what those regulations were intended to allow. Zoning laws, building codes, and environmental regulations were written for conventional development projects and did not anticipate the scale and sophistication of private survival infrastructure. Intelligence agencies were reportedly aware of the bunker network, but viewed it as a private security matter rather than a national security threat. As long as the facilities were not being used for illegal activities or to threaten public safety, government intervention was considered inappropriate and potentially counterproductive. International relations considerations also influenced government responses. Many of the individuals involved in bunker construction were influential figures in global politics and economics, and confronting them directly could damage important diplomatic and economic relationships. Governments preferred to maintain plausible deniability about private survival preparations. However, some officials expressed private concerns about the implications of the bunker network for social cohesion and emergency preparedness. The creation of parallel survival infrastructure for wealthy elites, while public emergency services remained underfunded, raised questions about priorities and equity that could become politically problematic. Emergency management officials noted that bunker preparations could actually improve overall disaster response capabilities if the facilities were designed to support broader community needs during emergencies. However, the private nature of the bunkers and their focus on excluding rather than including local populations limited their potential benefits for public safety. The government response to the bunker network reflected broader challenges in regulating private activities that had public implications in an era of extreme wealth inequality and global risk. Sarah's investigation revealed that the New Zealand bunker network was part of a larger international system of survival facilities designed to provide wealthy elites with options for relocating during various crisis scenarios. The global scope of the project suggested coordination and planning that went far beyond individual survival preparation. Properties in remote areas of Canada, northern Scotland, rural Australia, and isolated Pacific Islands all showed similar patterns of ownership structures, construction activities, and equipment purchases. The facilities were apparently designed to provide backup options if any single location became compromised or unsuitable during extended crisis periods. Communication systems linking the various facilities would allow bunker occupants to coordinate responses to global events and potentially relocate between facilities as circumstances changed. The network provided redundancy and flexibility that would be crucial for survival during extended periods of global instability. Supply chains supporting the international bunker network involved specialized companies capable of delivering equipment and supplies to remote locations around the world. These companies had developed expertise in operating under challenging conditions and maintaining discretion about their activities and clients. Personnel recruitment for the international network included identifying and vetting individuals with essential skills who could be rapidly deployed to any facility in the network as needed. Medical professionals, engineers, security specialists, and other essential personnel were apparently pre-positioned or on call to support bunker operations anywhere in the network. Financial structures supporting the international network involved complex arrangements for funding ongoing operations, maintaining facilities during dormant periods, and rapidly scaling up activities if crisis situations emerged. The financial planning suggested preparation for scenarios involving extended periods of global economic disruption. Strategic planning for the international network apparently included analysis of various crisis scenarios and development of protocols for deciding when and how to activate different facilities. The level of planning suggested that bunker operations were viewed as a serious business rather than merely expensive insurance policies. The international scope of the bunker network raised questions about sovereignty, taxation, and regulation that had not been addressed by existing legal frameworks designed for conventional international business operations. The technological sophistication of the bunker network represented state-of-the-art applications of multiple advanced systems designed to maintain modern living standards during extended isolation from normal infrastructure. The technology reflected both the resources available to wealthy clients and the expertise of the technology industry figures involved in bunker development. Life support systems included redundant air filtration and circulation equipment capable of operating for years without external maintenance. Water purification and recycling systems could process contaminated inputs and maintain drinking water supplies indefinitely. Waste management systems were designed to handle all biological and material waste without external disposal. Power generation relied on multiple redundant systems, including solar panels, wind turbines, geothermal systems, and backup generators using various fuel sources. Battery storage systems could maintain operations during extended periods without renewable energy generation. Fuel supplies were calculated to support backup generation for years if necessary. Food production capabilities included hydroponic and aeroponic growing systems capable of producing fresh vegetables and fruits year-round without soil or external inputs. Protein sources included fish farming systems and insect cultivation operations. Food preservation and storage systems could maintain emergency supplies for extended periods. Communication systems provided encrypted satellite connectivity independent of terrestrial infrastructure. Computing systems included both local servers and satellite links to maintain internet connectivity and access to external information sources. Entertainment systems were designed to maintain psychological well-being during extended isolation periods. Medical facilities included surgical equipment, diagnostic systems, pharmaceutical storage, and telemedicine capabilities allowing remote consultation with external medical specialists. Laboratory equipment could perform basic medical testing and research functions. Medical supplies were calculated to support healthcare needs for bunker populations for extended periods. Security technology included perimeter monitoring, access control, weapons storage, and communication systems for coordinating defensive measures. Surveillance systems could monitor large areas around bunker locations and provide early warning of potential threats. The integration of these various technological systems required sophisticated control systems and technical expertise to maintain operations over extended periods without external support. Sarah's investigation forced her to confront the human cost of the bunker network, both for those included in survival preparations and for those excluded from them. The psychological, social, and moral implications of dividing humanity into those worthy of survival and those left to face catastrophes unprepared were profound and disturbing. Interviews with construction workers revealed the psychological burden of building facilities designed to exclude the majority of humanity from survival during catastrophic events. Many workers reported feelings of moral conflict about contributing to projects that seemed to abandon social responsibility in favor of private protection. Security personnel described the challenge of maintaining operational readiness for scenarios involving the breakdown of normal social order. Training for bunker security included preparation for defending facilities against desperate survivors seeking shelter, creating psychological stress about potential conflicts with neighbors and community members. Mental health professionals noted the psychological costs for wealthy individuals involved in bunker preparation. Constant focus on catastrophic scenarios and survival planning could contribute to anxiety, paranoia, and social isolation. The bunker mindset might become self-reinforcing, making normal social interactions seem threatening or irrelevant. Family dynamics within bunker-owning households were reportedly strained by the secrecy and paranoia associated with survival preparations. Children were often excluded from knowledge about family bunker plans, creating psychological burdens and family tensions. Relationships with friends and community members became complicated by hidden preparations. Local communities affected by bunker construction experienced social fragmentation as wealthy outsiders purchased properties and restricted access to previously public areas. Traditional social networks were disrupted by the presence of secretive facilities and security personnel who viewed local residents with suspicion. The broader social implications included the erosion of collective approaches to problem-solving and emergency preparedness. If wealthy individuals were focusing on private survival rather than public solutions, community resilience and social cohesion could be weakened at precisely the time when collective action was most needed. Sarah realized that the bunker network was not just about physical survival, but about preserving social stratification and inequality even in post-disaster scenarios, potentially making recovery and rebuilding more difficult for everyone. Sarah's investigation reached a critical juncture when she received a warning that her activities had been detected by security personnel associated with the bunker network. The warning came from David Park, her inside source, who reported that internal security reviews had identified potential information leaks and were taking countermeasures. The warning forced Sarah to confront the risks of continuing her investigation versus the importance of exposing information that the public needed to know. The individuals behind the bunker network had significant resources and influence that could be used to suppress unfavorable coverage or retaliate against those who threatened their privacy and security. Legal experts warned Sarah that her investigation might be violating privacy laws, trespassing regulations, or national security provisions designed to protect critical infrastructure. The legal framework had not anticipated investigations into private survival preparations, creating uncertainty about what activities were legally permissible. Professional journalism organizations expressed support for Sarah's investigation while acknowledging the challenges of reporting on powerful individuals who valued privacy and had resources to defend their interests through legal and other means. The story represented important public interest journalism that needed to be balanced against respect for individual rights. Sarah's editors were supportive but cautious, recognizing both the importance of the story and the potential for legal and financial retaliation from subjects of the investigation. Media organizations had limited resources to defend against well-funded legal challenges, creating incentives for self-censorship when covering powerful individuals. International press freedom organizations noted that the bunker story represented broader challenges in holding wealthy elites accountable for activities that had public implications but were conducted privately. The concentration of wealth and power created opportunities for avoiding scrutiny that undermined democratic accountability. Personal safety considerations became paramount as Sarah realized that her investigation was being monitored and that continued reporting might put her at risk. The bunker network represented not just financial resources, but also security capabilities that could be used to protect secrets through intimidation or worse. The decision about whether to continue the investigation required weighing personal safety, legal risks, and professional obligations against the public importance of exposing the bunker network and its implications for social equity and democratic governance. Despite the risks, Sarah decided to complete her investigation and began compiling evidence for publication. The documentation process required careful verification of sources, protection of whistleblowers, and presentation of information in ways that would be credible and compelling while avoiding legal liability. Photographic evidence from construction workers provided visual proof of the scale and sophistication of bunker construction projects. The images showed reinforced concrete structures, sophisticated ventilation systems, and luxury accommodations that clearly exceeded what would be necessary for legitimate agricultural purposes. Financial documentation revealed the flow of money through shell companies and the purchase of specialized equipment and supplies. Import records showed the delivery of medical equipment, communication systems, and preserved food in quantities that could only be explained by preparation for extended isolation during catastrophic events. Testimony from multiple sources provided corroborating accounts of bunker construction, operational planning, and security measures. The consistency of accounts from different individuals working on separate projects strengthened the credibility of claims about the scope and purpose of the bunker network. Legal analysis examined the regulatory framework governing bunker construction and identified areas where private survival preparations might conflict with public safety, environmental protection, or social equity considerations. The analysis provided context for understanding the policy implications of private bunker development. Comparative research examined similar survival preparations in other countries and historical precedents for wealthy elites creating private refuge during crisis periods. The research provided perspective on whether the current bunker network represented normal, prudent planning or an unprecedented abandonment of social responsibility. Expert commentary from ethicists, emergency management professionals, and social scientists provided analysis of the broader implications of private bunker development for social cohesion, democratic governance, and collective problem-solving during crisis periods. The compilation process required balancing the need for comprehensive documentation with the practical constraints of space, readability, and legal safety. The final article would need to be both informative and compelling, while avoiding claims that could not be fully substantiated. Sarah's completed investigation presented her editors with a decision about whether to publish a story that would inevitably provoke controversy and potential retaliation from powerful individuals. The editorial decision required weighing journalistic principles, public interest, legal risks, and practical consequences. The public interest case for publication was strong. Citizens had a right to know how wealthy elites were preparing for catastrophic events, particularly if those preparations reflected knowledge about risks that were not being shared with the general public. The story raised important questions about social responsibility, democratic governance, and emergency preparedness that needed public discussion. Legal review identified potential risks, but concluded that the story was based on credible sources, documented evidence, and legitimate public interest concerns. Careful fact-checking and responsible presentation could minimize legal exposure while ensuring that important information reached the public. Editorial colleagues debated the potential consequences of publication, including the possibility that exposure of bunker locations could compromise security measures designed to protect people during genuine emergencies. However, they concluded that the public benefits of transparency outweighed the risks of disclosure. Media ethics experts supported publication while emphasizing the importance of responsible reporting that protected source confidentiality, avoided unnecessary invasion of privacy, and focused on policy implications rather than personal attacks. The story needed to inform public debate rather than simply satisfy curiosity about wealthy individuals. Security considerations included the possibility that publication could trigger retaliation against Sarah, her sources, or the media organization itself. However, security experts noted that publication might actually provide protection by making suppression efforts more visible and difficult to execute. International press freedom organizations encouraged publication as an example of important investigative journalism that held powerful individuals accountable for activities with public implications. The story represented the type of reporting that was essential for democratic governance. Despite the risks, Sarah decided to complete her investigation and began compiling evidence for publication. The documentation process required careful verification of sources, protection of whistleblowers, and presentation of information in ways that would be credible and compelling while avoiding legal liability. Photographic evidence from construction workers provided visual proof of the scale and sophistication of bunker construction projects. The images showed reinforced concrete structures, sophisticated ventilation systems, and luxury accommodations that clearly exceeded what would be necessary for legitimate agricultural purposes. Financial documentation revealed the flow of money through shell companies and the purchase of specialized equipment and supplies. Import records showed the delivery of medical equipment, communication systems, and preserved food in quantities that could only be explained by preparation for extended isolation during catastrophic events. Testimony from multiple sources provided corroborating accounts of bunker construction, operational planning, and security measures. The consistency of accounts from different individuals working on separate projects strengthened the credibility of claims about the scope and purpose of the bunker network. Legal analysis examined the regulatory framework governing bunker construction and identified areas where private survival preparations might conflict with public safety, environmental protection, or social equity considerations. The analysis provided context for understanding the policy implications of private bunker development. Comparative research examined similar survival preparations in other countries and historical precedents for wealthy elites creating private refuge during crisis periods. The research provided perspective on whether the current bunker network represented normal, prudent planning or an unprecedented abandonment of social responsibility. Expert commentary from ethicists, emergency management professionals, and social scientists provided analysis of the broader implications of private bunker development for social cohesion, democratic governance, and collective problem-solving during crisis periods. The compilation process required balancing the need for comprehensive documentation with the practical constraints of space, readability, and legal safety. The final article would need to be both informative and compelling, while avoiding claims that could not be fully substantiated. Sarah's completed investigation presented her editors with a decision about whether to publish a story that would inevitably provoke controversy and potential retaliation from powerful individuals. The editorial decision required weighing journalistic principles, public interest, legal risks, and practical consequences. The public interest case for publication was strong. Citizens had a right to know how wealthy elites were preparing for catastrophic events, particularly if those preparations reflected knowledge about risks that were not being shared with the general public. The story raised important questions about social responsibility, democratic governance, and emergency preparedness that needed public discussion. Legal review identified potential risks, but concluded that the story was based on credible sources, documented evidence, and legitimate public interest concerns. Careful fact-checking and responsible presentation could minimize legal exposure while ensuring that important information reached the public. Editorial colleagues debated the potential consequences of publication, including the possibility that exposure of bunker locations could compromise security measures designed to protect people during genuine emergencies. However, they concluded that the public benefits of transparency outweighed the risks of disclosure. Media ethics experts supported publication while emphasizing the importance of responsible reporting that protected source confidentiality, avoided unnecessary invasion of privacy, and focused on policy implications rather than personal attacks. The story needed to inform public debate rather than simply satisfy curiosity about wealthy individuals. Security considerations included the possibility that publication could trigger retaliation against Sarah, her sources, or the media organization itself. However, security experts noted that publication might actually provide protection by making suppression efforts more visible and difficult to execute. International press freedom organizations encourage publication as an example of important investigative journalism that held powerful individuals accountable for activities with public implications. The story represented the type of reporting that was essential for democratic governance in an era of extreme wealth concentration. The final editorial decision was to proceed with publication while implementing additional security measures to protect Sarah and her sources. The story would be released simultaneously across multiple platforms to make suppression more difficult and ensure maximum public access to the information. Publication of Sarah's investigation triggered immediate and intense global reactions that revealed deep divisions about wealth, survival, and social responsibility in an era of increasing global risks. The response demonstrated both the power of investigative journalism and the challenges of addressing systemic inequality. Media coverage was extensive and polarized. Progressive outlets praised the investigation for exposing inequality in disaster preparedness and the abandonment of social responsibility by wealthy elites. Conservative publications defended private property rights and individual responsibility for survival, while questioning the motives and methods of the investigation. Public reaction was similarly divided along economic and ideological lines. Many citizens expressed outrage at the revelation that wealthy individuals were preparing elaborate private survival facilities while public emergency services remained underfunded. Others argued that successful individuals had earned the right to protect themselves and their families through any legal means available. Government officials in New Zealand and other countries affected by bunker construction were forced to respond to public pressure for increased regulation and oversight of private survival facilities. Some called for transparency requirements, community benefit obligations, or restrictions on bunker construction that excluded local populations from disaster preparedness. Technology industry leaders largely avoided public comment on the investigation, though some defenders argued that private innovation in survival technology could eventually benefit broader populations. Critics noted that the resources devoted to private bunkers could have been used for public infrastructure improvements that would benefit everyone. International security experts warned that publicity about bunker locations could compromise security measures and potentially endanger the individuals the facilities were designed to protect. However, transparency advocates argued that secrecy around survival preparations undermined democratic accountability and public trust. Legal challenges to the investigation began immediately, with attorneys representing bunker owners claiming invasion of privacy, trespassing, and violation of confidentiality agreements. Media organizations prepared for extended legal battles while continuing to report on developments related to the bunker network. The investigation sparked broader discussions about preparedness, inequality, and social responsibility that extended far beyond the specific bunker projects. The story became a catalyst for debates about how societies should prepare for catastrophic risks and whether private solutions were adequate substitutes for collective action. 6 months after publication of the bunker investigation, the long-term implications were becoming clear. Sarah's reporting had not only exposed private survival preparations, but had also catalyzed broader changes in how societies thought about disaster preparedness, wealth inequality, and social responsibility. Policy responses varied by jurisdiction, but many countries began implementing new regulations governing private bunker construction. Requirements for community impact assessments, local hiring preferences, and emergency resource sharing were designed to ensure that private survival facilities contributed to, rather than detracted from, community resilience. Public investment in emergency preparedness increased in many areas, as citizens demanded that governments match private bunker capabilities with public infrastructure improvements. The contrast between private luxury bunkers and underfunded public emergency services became a powerful political issue that influenced budget priorities and policy debates. Technology transfer from bunker projects began benefiting broader populations as innovations in renewable energy, water purification, food production, and communication systems were adapted for public use. Some jurisdictions required bunker developers to share technological advances with public emergency management agencies. Social movements demanding survival equity emerged in multiple countries, arguing that access to disaster preparedness should not depend on individual wealth. These movements advocated for public bunker systems, community resilience programs, and policies ensuring that survival resources were distributed based on need rather than ability to pay. Sarah continued investigating related topics, focusing on how extreme wealth was creating parallel systems for healthcare, education, and security that bypassed public institutions. Her bunker investigation had opened doors to understanding broader patterns of inequality and privatization that were reshaping society. The bunker network itself continued operating, but under increased scrutiny and regulation. Some facilities were modified to include community access provisions during emergencies, while others faced legal challenges or regulatory restrictions that limited their exclusivity. Academic research into the psychological and social effects of bunker culture expanded, revealing complex relationships between wealth, anxiety, and social isolation that had implications beyond disaster preparedness. The research contributed to broader understanding of how inequality affected mental health and social cohesion. International cooperation on disaster preparedness improved as the bunker investigation highlighted the inadequacy of current emergency response systems. Global initiatives to share survival technologies, coordinate emergency responses, and ensure equitable access to disaster preparedness gain support from governments and international organizations. The most lasting impact was a shift in public consciousness about the relationship between private wealth and public welfare. The bunker story became a symbol of how extreme inequality could undermine social solidarity and collective problem-solving at precisely the time when cooperation was most needed. As Sarah reflected on her investigation's impact, she realized that exposing the bunker network had revealed something fundamental about contemporary society: the tension between individual survival and collective resilience that would define humanity's response to the challenges ahead. The question was no longer whether wealthy elites were preparing for catastrophe, but whether humanity could develop survival strategies that included everyone rather than abandoning the majority to face disasters alone. The bunker investigation had shown that when societies fail to address inequality and collective challenges, the wealthy will create private solutions that protect themselves while leaving others vulnerable. Whether this represented prudent individual preparation or a betrayal of social responsibility remained a question that each society would have to answer for itself. In her final report, Sarah concluded that the real story was not about underground bunkers, but about the choices societies make when facing existential challenges. The bunker network was a symptom of deeper problems that required collective solutions, not individual escape plans. The future would depend on whether humanity could learn to survive together rather than separately.